Greetings, everyone! Welcome once more to Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive into the world of Golarion, the setting? If you are, we're going to be going deep into Pathfinder's past, to the Age of Destiny, and learning about one of the other great human civilizations of this time period, those that rose after the Age of Darkness, the Tekritanin League. You are ready to learn about this people that unfortunately have become merely a footnote in history. I, your host and guide, Tekritanin League, can activate the time-space dimensional portal to lead us to Golarion. We're going to be going to modern-day Golarion, mind you, because we're just going to be learning about some ancient history there and not diving back into their past. I'm not crazy with some extra time travel. I'm already time-traveling enough as it is, getting to Golarion, let alone really diving back in the past. But, please do leave me a tip before we go through the portal. A little bit of subscribing on YouTube if you're there, or going over there if you're not, and subscribing once the video is up there, and making sure you do let me know your thoughts about it, Tekritanin. Because would you use ancient ruins from it, information from it, a place that is mostly, in many ways, lost to history because of the other great empires around it? If you are ready to go, take my hand. The portal awaits. We've arrived. Unfortunately, there is no good one source on the Tekritanin. This is something that I'm going to say. There's little bits of information spread out here and there, and in many ways, the Tekritanin League is linked to its two neighbors, the Jiska Imperium and Ancient Osirian. The fact is that Tekritanin only had about 500 years of being independent before Ancient Osirian basically vassalized it. And then it was another 1,000 years before they then conquered it officially. Even as a vassal state, it was still unique in many ways and developed much of its own culture, which affects modern-day Thuvia today, which is its ancestor. Let's dive into it, though. These 3 books will give you a little bit of information on the Tekritanin League. Hints at history, major events, things that were going on there. The major ones are, of course, the campaign settings from 1st edition, the Lost Kingdoms book, particularly in its first part, and a little bit in Ancient Osirian section of it, and of course the World Guide from 2nd edition. Definitely not as much time travel as Star Wars or Star Trek. Alright. So, this is Thuvia. This is the capital of Thuvia. Why am I using this picture? Because we have to start with Thuvia today. Thuvia is in many ways a successor to the Tekritanin League. It's also a successor to Ancient Osirian because of its wings. The Tekritanin League was a series of city-states that were decentralized, semi-autonomous, that were allied together to fight the various threats around it, Jiska and Osirian, to basically hold against them. Thuvia is a united group of city-states. The Tekritanin League developed powerful, deeping dives into herbalism and alchemy, horticulture, something that basically allowed for the discovery of the Sun Orchid Elixir that the Thuvians built their civilization, their country on. So, though Thuvia is in many ways indirectly connected with it, a good example here for Thuvia, just as establishing this all here, is of course their capital. It's built on ruins of the Tekritanin. Now that we've established all this, now that we've shown all this, we will dive into that legacy a little bit more. We will dive into Thuvia a bit more. Let's just look at this place. A powerful civilization which flourished in the Age of Destiny. Was independent for a while, was a vassal state for a while, but in the end was destroyed by Ancient Osirian and the 4 pharaohs of Section. It still lasted for just shy of 2,000 years. That is a long history. We can officially see, and I'm showing this map here because this map dates from its destruction. I think that's why this map is important. Because this is the time period of the fall. This is circa negative 1400 AR. Right after the defeat of the Tekritanin League and assimilating them into ancient Osirian. But that middle section of ancient Osirian was Tekritanin. Tekritanin grew out of nomads, people that lived in that region there. The fact is, it formed, we estimate, in about negative 3250 AR in the Age of Destiny. Basically, the Jiska Imperium was growing a lot of power to the west, and Osirians were growing to power in the east. These two neighbors of this region basically forced these nomadic bands to start working together. And the first city-states of the Tekritanin League grew up out of here. Now, they did engage with trade in both of these neighbors. There were small disputes. There were things like that. They had some rivalries. But the fact is, the government of Tekritanin was largely decentralized, and these city-states that existed in here were largely autonomous, semi-autonomous, if you will. And the fact is that the Tekritanins, for the most part, tried to stay neutral. They stayed neutral in many things. Eventually, when the conflict between Jiska and Osirian came to a head, the League sided with the Osirians. They assisted the Osirians when they finally defeated the Jiska Imperium in negative 2764. This, though, unfortunately, would lead to their very own downfall. This joining with ancient Osirian basically allowed them to survive in a way. Also, it led to their vassalization. The battle was across their territory. The ancient Osirians had used their territory. They kind of had moved in. They did stuff in that territory, which I think I've talked about in videos, but remains to today. My Thuvi video probably talks about some of it there too. But yes, they'd been a political force here, a neutral territory, a melting pot of cultures, and became a vassal nation. They still were an independent nation, technically, during this time period, even though they had been vassalized as a result of the allyship with that. When the Four Pharaohs of Ascension basically came to rule ancient Osirian, caused the second age of the Osirian Empire, they conquered the Tekritanin. They did battle with them. They went to war with them. This led to many of their great cities being sacked. Some of the city-states in the east were absorbed into Osirian. The rest razed to the ground when they were too far outside of easy control. Many ruins existed, many remains gone. What little bit of the League existed there went into small places, disappeared, died. It's not to say there aren't legacies. There wasn't culture that remained there. There's information we know. The ruins still do exist. But 2,000 years, a developed kind of decentralized culture, combining many different people, these nomadic people, this melting pot, this part that was a lot of the people of Northern Garund at the time, was gone. And Osirian ruled. So, because it was less centralized, it was a mixing pot of cultures. There was border disputes, though, especially east and west, but they did bring civilization post Age of Darkness to this region. Some of their information and some of their connections traveled to the Inner Sea in Aveston. The fact is also, we don't know, other than a few things about their culture, what exists. These cultures do tend to be a bit of legacy, so I'll talk about them when I talk about what remains of the legacy, because big important parts of the culture that we know were Tekritanin do exist today, technically. As for its language, it came about from a lot of spoken languages were from the various nomad regions, but coalesced into a special type of Creole called Tekritanin. The influence of this Creole language of Tekritanin is still felt today. Basically, there's a lot of regional languages that appear around the Inner Sea, which have a little bit of connections to Tekritanin. Granted, they are unique on their own, but a person that speaks Tekritanin basically can be understood by a number of languages commonly spoken in the Inner Sea region. Yeah, as much as it's technically a dead language and a gone language, its influence, the language that came about from these various cultures that came together into one, has an influence. Let's talk about its legacy. There are 4 things that are major legacies left over from Tekritanin: people, beast speaking, alchemy, and ruins. First off, let's talk about the people briefly, because there actually are some tribes that exist within Thuvia that are descended directly from the Tekritanin League's membership. Granted, they've had many thousands of years being reduced back to nomadic or tribal in the smaller regions outside the influence of major cultures to develop into something else. But there are groups like a warlord in the Glazing Sheet in Osirian that has basically a powerful stone mace resembling a legendary Tekritanin artifact, the Abbot Ne, the Blackstone Mace. Whether or not it really is or just resembles it, hard to say. It's rumors that, started about a decade ago, time-wise, that it was there. But again, things like this, magical items that are left over from there, are another legacy, but it's a lot less known legacy. Again, that links back to the ruins. Beast speaking. Basically, befriending, taming magical beasts was a skill of the Tekritanins. The picture I showed before was one from earlier editions, pre-remaster, where that was a Tekritanin beast speaker with a baby boule. Now, boules, I think, are outside of Pathfinder now. They're gone. But similar magical beasts and creatures being tamed and used by the Tekritanins was a thing of them. There still are some surviving beast speakers within Thuvia and the various regions where the Tekritanin League was that still carry this ability to today, who have this unique ability to basically speak, tame, befriend magical creatures. Alchemy. The modern-day Thuvian alchemy is a legacy of Tekritanin. Akoris Kirin's discovery of Sun Orchid Elixir would not have been possible without basically being deep into Tekritanin practices, learning them, understanding them, and the development of the Sun Orchid Elixir into something what it is now is based on Tekritanin knowledge. They dove deep into herbalism, desert horticulture. They are a desert region. They learned so much that it is incredibly important, this legacy. Final thing is, of course, ruins. Now, this is the Tagus Labyrinth, which... Oh, sorry, I moved beyond it accidentally. I hit the wrong button. The Tagus Labyrinth is from Tekritanin era. Whether or not it's directly Tekritanin is hard to say, but groups like the Society of Tekritanin History have been trying to explore these sites and deal with these things that are there. So, yeah, that's... I didn't involve the book there because that's Monsters of Myth, deals with the monster that lives in there that, doesn't deal with too much about this. And again, this ruins is from that era. But there are other ruins. Much of Thuvia's ruins, wilderness, because it is very desert, has some Tekritanin ruins. There are entire cities that are based on it. Pashao, the city there, actually dates back and has some connections to Tekritanin. Its magical university, Scrollspire, is built on a Tekritanin library well. So, Pashao has people being there since the Tekritanin League. It's a city that did not get completely destroyed. On the other hand, Mareb, Thuvia's current capital, while it doesn't date back all the way, it was built back since then, it was built on the ruins of a major Tekritanin city that was raised by Osirians. So you can see, Thuvia's connections to Tekritanin cannot be denied. It is a successor state of them. Granted, there is the deep influence of the Osirians, but it really is. And I think that's an important thing to say. Thuvia is something new, it's different. It's the city-states that grew out of the people that were left behind when Osirians, in the fall of their own empire, abandoned that region. But you have to think about how long the ancient Osirian civilization held control of that region. Certainly they had a lot of influence during its vassalization, 1,000 years of being a vassal. Even after its conquest, where most of its cities were destroyed, save for so few, those few cities survived. So there are cities in Thuvia which date back to that time period. Not to say some of these didn't fail in that time period there, in the tumultuous years up until Thuvia's founding, as more than just a set of city-states. But that legacy of being a bunch of city-states exists today. Thuvia is a bunch of united city-states that have formed a kind of league. What does that sound like? Tekritanin. They've done the same thing their ancestors did, for different reasons, mind you, but for similar reasons in many ways too. Defense, trade. These are important reasons the Tekritanin League formed. Granted, Thuvia doesn't have to worry about its neighbors so much, but it's still united because of them. The ruins, the culture, alchemy, beast-speaking, tribes, all these things are leftovers from Tekritanin, and a lot of it has been lost to the ages. But its ruins remain in the desert. Its legacy remains strong. And as a fascinating group of people that did live and were technically independent. Even being vassalized, they're still their own group in many ways. They're not fully assimilated for 2,000 years. They had a lot of time to bring civilization to their region. Was lost a lot of it, but we can see their influence in many ways. And it's a fascinating story and a fascinating group that I would hope that maybe Paizo will stop by and explore some of their ruins and some of their culture a little bit more. Everybody loves ancient Osirian, maybe a little bit Jiskin League, and many of those ancient civilizations, but some of these ancient civilizations would be really nice to visit that you've only kind of talked about a little bit. This is one of them. Love for the Tekritanin. That'll be it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please join me again. We do more videos like this, whether it's over on my Twitch side of things or over on YouTube. Twitch side of things, I record videos like this. I have live plays of TTRPGs like Fall of Avenswell, Wednesdays at 8. I have my talk show podcasting kind of thing, discussing tabletop Saturdays at 6. All those are great things. I also do gameplay, chatting, all of the kind of Twitchy stuff you can always join me live for. But if you can't join me live and just want to check out tabletop stuff, that's YouTube. I might get a VOD channel for all the other stuff eventually, but for now, just wanting to see your tabletop stuff, go to the YouTube side of things. If you're on YouTube, please do remember to make sure you're subscribed over there, of course, and make sure you leave comments about stuff, like let me know what you think about the Tekritanin League and their legacy and stuff like that. I would like to know. But again, you can also check out older live plays, many things like that. It's a lot of great stuff over on the YouTube side of things. Check out my social media for updates on scheduling. Discord, the best of them all, but all of them are a fine place to see what's going on with my schedule. Anyway, until next time, we dive back into Golarion, whether it's history, its current time period, or whatever, or another tabletop. I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.